I don't think so. I think that a lot of companies, they just wait there and think about when this crisis will be over. I think that's obviously behavior that you cannot accept and will not lead you to any higher performance.
Do you think the structural changes that we're seeing today are going to stay?
Absolutely. That's the core of the new normal. This means that you will have still in 5 years, I think you will have banks that try to get rid of their debt, or governments or companies. So to get financing will be difficult also in 5 years. You will see the European community still struggling with governance issues. You will still see that in Europe we will not have massive growth. We will still see that a lot of emerging market multinationals come into Europe. So I don't think that we can wait until the crisis is over. We need to manage the new normal, and this means we need to learn how to make companies more resilient.
How do you do that? How do managers in this kind of market environment, in this kind of economic environment, learn to be resilient, not just for 1 year or for 1 quarter, but for at least a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades?
We need to start with measuring performance in a different way. Most companies measure performance in the return on equity in a 3-month period. I think we should measure performance in terms of return on equity over a longer period of time, 6 years, and we also need to take into account how volatile the return on equity is. So in combination of, we are actually able to measure the performance and the resilience of companies.
If the changes that we're seeing in Europe, around the world, will stay,
yes,
how do you then become a resilient company?
What we did was we analyzed over 600 firms in 7 industries, and we tried to understand what it takes to have sustained performance. So we identified a measure for sustained performance, and then we compared the top firms versus the flop firms.
Markus, when you look at VOLARE and the way it measured companies, which ones in your study came out top, and which ones were flop, and what kind of defined the difference?
Let's look at the pharmaceutical industry. We have VOLARE 10 top, AstraZeneca, GSK, Novo Nordisk. Flop would be Pfizer. What we see on the top is we have focus on the core business, focus on margins, trying to get R&D in-house, and try to grow through organic growth, mainly low-risk growth.
And the flop firms, what were they doing wrong, and why was their score lower?
They were over-diversified, they were interested in size per se, and they were completely neglecting the quality of niche markets.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.